But then another, talking about the, for you, would you say that this issue we are raising is political or governmental in nature? Looking at, because you saw the initial pushback of the minister herself saying of this was, political machinations trying to discredit her and the presidency of Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Do you see how much of this, in your opinion, is politics? How much of it has to do with governance? How much of it is bureaucratic? What are the issues here for you? What levels or platforms would you put them?
In the first place, you talked about bureaucracy. If the minister hadn't disregarded bureaucracy, she wouldn't be in this mess. That's the first thing. So before we begin to talk about politics, before we begin to talk about competence, what's the bureaucracy? The civil service of every country has bureaucratic processes. It could be cumbersome, it could be complex, but because it is a fact of the matter of such ministries, you cannot actually turn down the bureaucracy. So what Mrs. Betta Edu is saying there regarding certain, which I read her comments. I think that one of the things that help us heal quickly in individual relationships and such corporate brouhaha as we have it is actually to ensure that we take responsibility for the things we don't do right. Mrs. Betta Edu is not remorseful for having violated the process. And I think it's that kind of feeling that these are my enemies. No. We've always been told that anytime something happens, we look in the mirror first. Mrs. Betta Edu is not looking in the mirror. The person who erred right now happens to be Mrs. Betta Edu. So the first thing I expected her to have done was to say, I gave room for this entrapment. And even if these were to be certain pitfalls set for her by maybe political enemies, or the fact that the people who happen to be those she took over from didn't feel good that they are being investigated when another minister is there and perhaps is the one responsible, I guess that it is completely wrong of her to have even made a statement. I think it is important for her to have said, oh, this is a process I met on ground. And that is why when people appoint special advisors into offices, people have to be those that think out of the box. I have left jobs, Ayo, because when we agree on certain things when I start the jobs, and immediately we start to want to change, I respectfully maintain my relationship with you, but I take a walk. Because after all said and done, the responsibility of incompetence or not will fall on my shoulders, and I don't want to be held as somebody who doesn't know what he's doing. So what I'm bringing out of this conversation is that, we have to try as much as possible to tell the minister, because she's over here watching us this morning, that, Madam, you should take responsibility for what you do not do right. Madam Betta Edu had served as a commissioner. In fact, she served at the height of COVID. She went around that particular Cross River State meeting people. She was a very active person that I commended, who worked with Governor Ben Ayade. But the reality is you can't be talking like this because you understand the expectations and the demands of your office. So in the first place, she doesn't understand bureaucracy. She perhaps felt, I am the minister and I can never be questioned. And at the same time, let me say this, I have been within the corridors of working. I held an appointment before the last election. I was the spokesperson to a presidential candidate at the last election. And the reality was that politics is a game of dog eats dog. You will always even have enemies that are within close quarters, and they'll be expecting you to err so that they can be closer to the person who gave you that position. That means the school of hard knocks is what everybody must know about. The school of Remorseful politics is what you are aware of. There should have a high level of intellection to be able to practice politics. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's peculiar to different parts of the world. So street sense, book sense, area boy sense has to be a balancing of the act to play politics with the kind of people we have in this country.